Unhealed Wounds, a Memory from the Time of Oppression, dedication to every father and mother who endured pain in silence, to everyone who paid the price of dignity with patience and absence, to the soul of my brother Zohair, may God have mercy on him, and to all those who stood by us in those dark days. This memory is for you, because of you, and in your name. Introduction. This story is not fiction. It is made of flesh and blood, of tears that have streamed down our cheeks, and breaths that have been trapped in our chests for years. It is part of a wounded memory from a soul that has never found a homeland to embrace its pain. I tell it today not to complain, but so we do not forget. So the new generation understands that dignity is born of sacrifice, and that silence does have a voice when we write it down. The full story. Among the memories that never leave me, that grip my heart every time they cross my mind, there is one black moment carved into my soul. An unforgettable moment from the era of tyranny when we lived under the iron fist of the former Iraqi regime led by Saddam Hussein, a man who didn't govern, but crushed. He did not see the Iraqi people as citizens, but as tools to be bent and enemies to be punished. His brutality was doubled against the Kurds, especially those connected to the Kurdish opposition fighters. My uncle, Abdul Hamid, was one of those brave souls who rejected humiliation. He joined the Kurdish fighters in the early 1970s and later fled to Iran, then Austria. The regime saw this as treason, and in Saddam's Iraq, treason wasn't punished solely by targeting the traitor, but by punishing their roots, branches, and anyone around them. Among those were Abdul Hamid's parents, my grandparents, whose only crime was giving birth to a son who dreamed of freedom. It was the late 1980s, during the Iraq-Iran War, when the regime poured its wrath upon families of Kurdish opposition members. At our home, the water and electricity were cut off. Peace left us. We no longer knew the taste of night, because rumors surrounded us. They'll come for you at dawn. They'll take you south. You'll never return. Fear lived with us like a shadow on the wall. One suffocating summer morning, pounding on the door broke the air like an omen of doom. We opened it, and government officials and intelligence officers walked in. With dry cruelty, they announced, "We're taking Abdul Hamid's parents to an undisclosed location." They asked nothing about their age, their health, or their suffering. They simply wanted to punish Abdul Hamid by tormenting his parents. My grandfather was bedridden, paralyzed by a broken pelvis. He couldn't even sit up. My grandmother was moaning from heart disease, barely able to breathe. We begged them to let us take them ourselves. Mockingly, they agreed. My father carried them in his Toyota. We struggled to lay my grandfather down in the back, while my grandmother sat beside him. I insisted on going. I knew they'd need me every second. We arrived at a military compound in our hometown of Accra. There, the true horror began. A large military hall filled with elderly men and women, all parents of young Kurdish fighters. Their faces were pale, eyes full of fear. But they didn't shiver from cold. They collapsed from the unbearable heat, soaked in sweat, exhausted under the blazing summer sun. No water, no fan, no shade, just the cruelty of being weak in the hands of the merciless. I stayed with my grandparents for nearly 4 hours, comforting them, trying to ease their pain. But some things can't be hidden. Then came the order. They would all be transferred to an unknown location. I tried to go with them. A military officer stopped me. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm their neighbor," I replied. But he grew suspicious due to our matching names. He shouted in my face, "Your family. If you don't leave now, we'll take you too." It felt like my soul was being ripped out, but I had no choice. I fled through the fields, tears choking me, running blindly from hell. I reached my aunt's house, may God have mercy on her, and told them what had happened. Then I returned home. Everyone was devastated, my father, siblings, mother, all frozen in fear. Where had they taken them? Would they abandon them in the desert? Separate them? Leave them to die slowly? That evening, the news reached us. They'd been taken to a remote village called Bakerman, near a river dividing regime territory from Kurdish-held areas. There, they were dumped under the open sky. No shelter, no mattress, no medicine. They were told coldly, "You won't return unless you bring your sons. Otherwise, stay here forever." But the conscience of our people in Accra awoke. They smuggled the elderly and women across the river to the Kurdish side, where Peshmerga forces ensured their safety, and transported them to safer places. All of them, except three: my grandfather, my grandmother, and another elderly, ill woman. They couldn't move. They were left behind for 3 days and nights, exposed to the elements, exhausted by the heat, their only refuge being the prayers of the oppressed. The villagers did all they could to help, despite the danger. They tried sneaking in water and food, but the checkpoint was a nightmare, manned by a ruthless intelligence officer who allowed not even a breath of wind to pass. But hope does not die. On the third day, salvation came through a brave farmer. In his Toyota, he laid my grandfather in the trunk, under crates of tomatoes. He seated my grandmother and the elderly woman up front, covering them with sacks and crops to look natural. At the checkpoint, soldiers stopped him and asked, "Who are your passengers?" He replied steadily, "They're my family. They help me harvest." They let him pass. And just like that, the three of them escaped an unknown fate, thanks to the courage of a simple man, unafraid of injustice or death. But they couldn't return to Accra. Everyone knew us there. Security forces watched everything. So my brother Zohair, may God have mercy on him, came with his brown Brazilian car. He met the farmer on the city's outskirts. I was with him. We secretly transported our grandparents to the city of Mosul, where no one knew us. At my Aunt Salwa's house, a new life began. A life of secrecy, of hiding, and of buried pain. My father rented one house, then another. We lived in the shadows, whispering instead of speaking, thankful they survived, even though the wounds of those days would never heal. Those days were a deep, incurable wound, an unspeakable cruelty. Injustice layered upon injustice, yet my grandparents survived. Love survived hatred. The human spirit survived the tyrant, but the heart did not survive.